you know what hurts the most? It's not betrayal by strangers. You expect that. It's when a knife comes from the people who watched you take your first steps, the ones you believed would never turn on you. I used to think love meant sacrifice. That family was everything. And that if I just worked harder, gave more, stayed loyal, my efforts would be seen. Respected. Maybe even appreciated. But here's the thing, being useful isn't the same as being valued. Sometimes, it's just a prettier word for being used. I'm not here to whine. I've built my life from scratch. I don't need pity. But I am here to tell you how I went from being the backbone of my family, to the villain in their story. All because I finally stopped paying their bills, and started protecting my peace. This is the story of how I let go, and made them regret everything. Before we begin, thank you for being here. If you've ever felt overlooked by your family, if you've carried the weight while no one noticed, this story is for you. If any part of this hits home, drop a 1 in the comments. I want to know you're out there. And if you value real stories, raw, unfiltered, hit subscribe, share this video, and let's build a space for those who've been hurt, but are done staying silent. My name's Ethan. I'm 33. I live in Austin, Texas. By most people's standards, I've made it. I work as a lead software engineer at a mid-sized tech firm. The kind of job with great pay, flexible hours, and zero micromanaging. I drive a clean, modest Tesla, not because I need to show off, but because I like efficiency. I own my apartment outright in a decent neighborhood, and I'm finally in a place where I sleep peacefully at night. I'm not flashy. I'm not a millionaire. But I worked hard, saved smart, and kept my circle tight. I've been independent since college. No handouts. No family trust fund. Just internships, late nights coding, and grinding my way up the ladder. You'd think with all that stability, my parents would be proud. But in my family, none of that ever mattered. Not when compared to Lena, my younger sister, the golden child who could do no wrong. Growing up, I was always the responsible one. The fixer. The reliable son. And for years, I wore that role like armor. I helped wherever I could. I didn't even think twice about it. When my parents' roof started leaking one brutal winter, I wired them $12,000 the same week to cover repairs. When they were weeks away from losing their house after a failed second mortgage, money they used to help Lena start her dream bakery, I cut a check for $45,000. That bakery closed in under 6 months. When they couldn't afford their utilities or meds, I set up automatic payments, groceries, electric, water, you name it. Every month, $1,000 like clockwork. Never missed a beat. And Lena? I gave her $20,000 to start a vintage clothing business. Then $5,000 for a photography studio. Then another $10,000 to help her pivot to crypto content. Each time, she promised, "This one's different, Ethan." I swear. Each time, she ghosted me once the check cleared. But I didn't complain. I told myself, this is what family does. What I didn't know then was that they weren't keeping a tally of everything I gave. They were just waiting for the moment I finally said no. So they could call me heartless. Lena was always the star. Even when we were kids, the favoritism wasn't subtle, it was carved into the walls of our house. She got the new bike with the streamers and pink rims. I fixed up a second-hand one from the neighbor's garage. When she cried, the world stopped. When I cried, I was told to toughen up. She didn't need good grades. She just had to smile and say she tried. I brought home straight A's, and my dad would nod like I'd done something mildly respectable. Maybe tell me to keep it up. Mom called her our little dreamer. She called me our solid one. That was code for, Lena gets the chances, Ethan picks up the pieces. It wasn't even malicious. That's the part that messes with you. It was subtle. Warm. Drenched in gentle voices and backhanded compliments. That kind of loyalty is hard to question, until it burns you. You don't realize how much you've given until you're running on fumes. I spent most of my life believing that love meant effort. If I just worked harder, gave more, they'd eventually see it. That one day I'd walk into a room and they'd beam at me, not for solving a problem or sending a wire transfer, but just for being there. For a long time, I kept thinking, it's okay. They're just stressed. Lena's struggling. I'll carry a bit more until things get better. But love built on sacrifice without reciprocation? That's not love. That's debt with a smile. And mine was about to come due. Christmas Eve had always been a sacred kind of tradition in our family. No matter where life had scattered us, we came back home, back to the two-story house in the Houston suburbs, with its slightly leaning mailbox and the porch light that never worked quite right. That night, the air outside was sharp with December cold, but the house was wrapped in the kind of warmth only years of memories could create. Inside, the kitchen smelled like cinnamon rolls, roasted chicken, and whatever spice Mom always used that reminded me of childhood. The fireplace was lit. Lena was just arriving, wheeling in a sleek suitcase and brushing snow from her coat with the same flair she used in Instagram reels. I brought a bottle of bourbon, Dad's favorite, and set it quietly on the table. He didn't say much. Just looked up from his seat by the fire and gave a small nod. That was his version of gratitude. Dinner moved like muscle memory. Laughter floated through the house as we gathered around the long wooden table. Mom was retelling a story about our neighbor's Christmas lights fiasco, Lena chiming in with details like she'd written the script. Dad poured himself a second glass of wine. I poured my first. It felt familiar. Comfortable. Almost like everything was okay. Then Dad set his glass down, cleared his throat, and said, without warning, without preface, "We've made a decision. All of the inheritance is going to Lena." Just like that. Silence fell across the table so fast it felt physical. My fork hovered midair. My stomach dropped before my brain caught up. I looked at Mom. She didn't flinch. I looked at Lena. She was swirling her wine like it was a performance. At first, I thought I misheard. Or that maybe this was some kind of joke, some messed up holiday humor that would land badly and be waved off. But then Dad met my eyes and said, flatly, "You've already got a house. A job. You're doing fine. Lena needs this more than you." And just like that, everything warm in that room turned cold. Mom set her fork down gently, as if she'd been waiting for this moment. Her voice was soft, almost rehearsed. "Sweetheart, you already have so much. Lena's still finding her path. You're her older brother. It's only right that you support her." There wasn't an ounce of hesitation in her voice. Not even a flicker of doubt. Like this was just logical. Obvious. Fair. Lena didn't bother pretending to be surprised. She leaned back in her chair, the corner of her mouth curving upward in the kind of smirk that only someone completely untouchable could wear. She didn't say thank you. She didn't even look at me. She just took a slow sip of wine, like she was drinking to her victory. I looked at all of them, but no one looked back with shame. Just expectation. Just certainty that I would nod and accept it. My hands were still on the table, but I couldn't feel them anymore. Suddenly, all the moments I had buried started rising, fast and ugly. The transfer slips. The late-night calls. The overdraft fees when I paid off their second mortgage. The way Lena smiled at me every time she needed help, then disappeared. I remembered how they called me their rock. Now I realized rocks are only useful when someone needs to stand on them. I felt the room getting smaller. My chest heavier. Their voices distant. I pushed back my chair. The wood screeched against the floor. No one stopped me. Not even Mom. I walked out the front door. The cold air slapped my face, but it felt better than staying. Behind me, the door closed with a dull, hollow sound. Not a bang. Not a slam. Just final. It was a Thursday night, almost 2 weeks since that Christmas dinner. I was halfway through reheating leftovers when the knocking started. Not a polite tap. It was sharp. Urgent. Relentless. I already knew who it was. I didn't move at first. Just stood there in the kitchen, the microwave humming behind me, the air thick with tension. My phone hadn't buzzed in days. No messages. No missed calls. Just silence. Now, they were here. I opened the door to find all three of them standing on my doorstep, Dad with his arms crossed, Mom clutching her purse like it might protect her from confrontation, and Lena, looking like she was bored already. None of them looked surprised to see me. Like they'd rehearsed this moment, already decided what would be said before they even got out of the car. Mom jumped in first. "Ethan, we need to talk." I didn't move. Didn't invite them in. Dad's tone was cold. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" "You're being unfair," Mom added, voice sharper this time. "You cut off everything without even discussing it with us. How are we supposed to live now?" "You made us dependent on you," Dad growled, as if that was my fault. "Your father and I are retired. You know we rely on your support for the bills." I just stood there, not blinking. Letting them talk. Letting them unload. Mom stepped closer. "We were hoping you'd come to your senses. You're not thinking clearly. You're just emotional." That was rich, me being too emotional, after years of them pushing boundaries and pretending not to notice. Then Lena spoke. She was leaning against the porch railing, arms folded, chewing gum like this was an episode of some reality show. "Oh my God, are you really doing this over some money?" she said, eyebrows raised in mock disbelief. "Seriously, Ethan? You're being dramatic. It's not like you're broke. You don't even need it." She smiled. A small, smug smile that didn't reach her eyes. It took every ounce of control not to react. Instead, I looked at all three of them, one by one. Then I spoke. Calm. Steady. Final. "You made your choice," I said. "You gave everything to her. You called it fair. You called it love." I turned to Mom. "You said I already had enough, so I should give more." To Dad. "You told me not to make this a big deal." To Lena. "And you said I was being dramatic." I exhaled slowly, letting the silence sit. "So let Lena support you now. Since she's the one who deserves everything." Dad's jaw tightened. Mom looked stunned, as if she didn't expect me to actually mean it. Lena rolled her eyes and turned away. I didn't wait for a reply. I didn't need one. I stepped back inside and shut the door. No yelling. No swearing. No final blow-up. Just the sound of the lock clicking into place. That night, I didn't cry. I didn't text anyone. I didn't even finish my dinner. I just sat in the dark, finally understanding something I should have learned a long time ago. Blood might be thicker than water. But peace is thicker than guilt. The silence that followed was the longest, most peaceful stretch of my life. 2 years passed. No calls. No voicemails. No holiday cards pretending nothing had happened. At first, I kept waiting for another knock at the door, some guilt-laced plea or dramatic meltdown. But none came. And slowly, I let myself breathe. I threw myself into work. Got promoted. Traveled. Ran my first half marathon. I started sleeping better. Eating better. I even met someone, a kind, quiet woman named Maya, who didn't ask for anything but always gave more than expected. I stopped checking my bank account with tension in my chest. My weekends were mine again. My apartment didn't feel like a stopgap anymore, it felt like home. For the first time, I felt like I wasn't carrying someone else's weight. I wasn't rescuing anyone. I was just living. Until they showed up again. I'd just gotten back from a long day when I saw them, my parents and Lena, standing outside my building, this time not with cold anger, but something worse. Suitcases. Lena was glued to her phone, barely looking up. My dad looked irritated, like he was already preparing to argue. Mom's face, though, that one I couldn't read. She looked tired. Lined. But beneath that, there was a flicker of something that made my stomach turn. Hope. I stepped out of my car slowly. Mom stepped forward first. "We need a place to stay," she said, her voice small. "Just for a few days." I didn't answer right away. I looked at the luggage. The three of them. Then back at my apartment window. "A few days," I repeated. "Our house needs repairs," Dad jumped in. "Plumbing. Foundation. You know how old it is." I nodded, but something was off. The timing. The vagueness. The way they were already standing like they belonged there. I told them I needed a moment and walked back toward my car, pretending to grab something, but really just breathing. Because something didn't feel right. They said it was about the house. But I'd seen desperation before, and this wasn't about a leaky pipe. The next morning, I took a slight detour on my way to work. I hadn't seen the old house in almost 2 years. Part of me expected to find it wrapped in caution tape or construction scaffolding, something to justify the story they gave me. But when I pulled up, everything looked the same. No contractors. No signs of renovation. No trucks. No tools. Just the same pale blue siding, cracked driveway, and crooked mailbox. As I stood by the gate, trying to make sense of it, a familiar voice called out. "Ethan?" I turned to see Mr. Kellerman, our old neighbor, watering his lawn in a faded Astros cap. "Long time no see," he said, walking over. I asked about the house, if he'd noticed any work being done. He frowned. "Renovations? Nah. They sold it last month. Family from Dallas moved in." My throat tightened. "They sold it?" He nodded like it was common knowledge. "Yeah. Figured you knew. Something about covering a big investment for your sister." I thanked him and got back in my car, fingers trembling as I pulled out my phone. I called Daniel, a friend of mine from college who now worked in real estate. If anyone could confirm what happened, it was him. By lunch, he called back. His tone was cautious. "Ethan, you sure you want to hear this? Tell me everything." He sighed. "Your parents took out a mortgage, $300,000. Used the house as collateral." I closed my eyes. "What for?" "Apparently, they gave $250,000 to Lena. She told them she had an inside track on a crypto investment. Promised to triple it in a year." I didn't speak. Daniel continued, "She lost it all within 5 months. The silence between us felt heavier than it should have. And the rest? Used it to cover living expenses and keep the loan payments from defaulting. But they couldn't keep up. Sold the house last month for $500,000 to cover the bank." I leaned back in my chair and stared at the ceiling. So it wasn't about plumbing. Or renovations. They didn't need a place to stay because their house was under repair. They needed one because it wasn't theirs anymore. And they never planned on telling me the truth. When I got home that evening, they were still there, sitting on the front steps like stray animals waiting to be let in. I didn't say much. Just unlocked the door, held it open, and stepped aside. "You can stay," I said. "Just for a week." Mom's eyes welled up instantly, like she'd been holding her breath. Dad gave a stiff nod. Lena didn't even look up from her phone. I didn't explain myself. Didn't mention the house. Or the money. Or the lies. I just watched them closely, like a scientist studying the behavior of something that had once been familiar. They moved in like it was a given. Within 24 hours, Mom had rearranged my kitchen. She moved the mugs, swapped the spices, and started talking about how this layout made more sense. Dad took over the living room. Left his shoes on the coffee table, threw his jacket over the arm of the couch, and turned the TV to the news at full volume like it was still his house. Lena? She invited her friends over. Poured wine. Put on music. Laughed like this was some Airbnb she'd scored for free. I'd come home from work to find her in my clothes, yes, my hoodie, flipping through channels, feet up, eyes glazed. "Hope you don't mind," she said once. Mine were still packed. I didn't answer. They didn't ask before using the washer. Or claiming drawers. Or leaving dishes in the sink. It was like watching someone rob you in slow motion while making eye contact the entire time. But I didn't flinch. I didn't argue. I didn't give them a reason to suspect a thing. Because I wanted them to feel comfortable. I wanted them to settle in, to believe they were safe, that the storm had passed, that I had finally come around. Because the more entitled they became, the harder they would fall. By day 4, I had seen enough. The entitlement wasn't just frustrating, it was clarifying. This wasn't temporary. They weren't just looking for shelter. They were moving in. Taking over. I started working from cafes and late-night co-working spaces to stay away longer, claiming I was under deadline. What I was really doing was making calls. First, to a realtor. I had my eye on a smaller place across town, 2 bedrooms, gated building, no forwarding address attached. It wasn't flashy, but it was mine. And I wanted to move before the week was up. Then, I called Daniel. "Can you help me sell the condo?" Quietly. No public listing. Just fast. He didn't ask questions. He didn't need to. Next, I spoke with my lawyer. I wanted everything airtight. Once the paperwork cleared, they'd have no claim, no warning, no idea what hit them. This wasn't revenge. It was escape. On day 6, I made the announcement over breakfast, casually, like it was no big deal. "My company's sending me to San Diego for a 6-month assignment," I said between bites of toast. "Some cross-departmental thing. Starts Monday." The reaction was immediate. Mom's face lit up like it was Christmas. "Oh, honey. That's amazing. We'll take good care of the place while you're gone." Lena clinked her coffee mug against mine. "Knew you'd come to your senses." Dad said nothing. Just gave a satisfied grunt and turned back to the news. Not one of them asked if I wanted them to leave while I was gone. Not one offered to pitch in or take care of anything. They assumed, without hesitation, that my absence meant their inheritance. That I was handing over the keys, literally and symbolically. I smiled, played along, and packed a few bags. But the rest? The rest was already in storage. 2 days later, while they scrolled TikTok and made plans for brunch, Daniel finalized the paperwork. The apartment was sold. Legally transferred. No way back. All I had to do now was let them enjoy it just long enough for the rug to be pulled out from under them. It happened faster than I expected. 2 days after I left for San Diego, they received the notice. A clean white envelope, tucked under the front door. Official letterhead. No fanfare, no drama, just a simple legal notice that the unit had been sold and the new owner would take possession by the end of the week. That morning, my phone buzzed 36 times in under an hour. Calls. Voicemails. Texts. At first, I ignored them. Then I got the video, sent by a neighbor who knew what I was doing. It showed Lena storming down the hallway in my hoodie, waving the notice in the air like it had personally offended her. My father was yelling at someone through the intercom. My mother sat in the hallway, trembling, hands over her mouth like she'd just witnessed a funeral. The panic was pure. Immediate. And exactly what they had earned. They called again. This time, I picked up. "What the hell is going on?" Lena screamed so loudly I had to pull the phone away from my ear. I didn't say anything. Mom's voice broke through, tearful, pleading. "Ethan, please. What is this? Why is someone saying the apartment is sold?" "Then Dad, you sold it? How could you do that? This is our home." That one made me laugh. "Your home?" I said, quietly. "Funny. That's exactly what I said 2 years ago." Silence. "I did what Lena did," I continued. I mortgaged the place. Took a risk. Lost everything. The only difference? I didn't lie about it. Dad sputtered, You don't mean that. You wouldn't. You chose her, I said, cutting him off. Remember? You said she needed it more. You handed everything to her and told me I had enough. Lena's voice came back, cracking with disbelief. You're just doing this to punish us. No, I replied. I'm doing this to finally be free of you. More silence. Except for Mom's crying. Dad's voice softened. You're turning your back on your own family. You turned your backs the moment I stopped being useful. I heard him inhale like he was going to say something else, but I didn't give him the chance. I wish you well, I said, and for once, I meant it. But I'm done carrying people who would let me drown if it meant staying dry. And then I ended the call. No rage. No screaming. No last words. Just a swipe of my finger across the screen, and it was done. Outside, wind rustled the leaves. Somewhere down the street, wind chimes played a lazy, broken tune. In my new place across town, sunlight filtered through the window, catching the steam from a mug of coffee I hadn't touched yet. There was no music playing, but the silence had a rhythm. I stood there, looking out over the quiet courtyard below, letting the weight of the past 2 years slip off my shoulders like a coat I no longer needed. No more waiting for apologies. No more carrying guilt. No more debt disguised as love. Just peace. Pure. Unapologetic. And mine. You know, for the longest time, I thought something was wrong with me. Not in a dramatic, self-pitying kind of way, but in the quiet, gnawing sense that no matter how much I did, it would never be enough. That I had to earn love that was handed freely to someone else. I thought if I just worked harder, kept being reliable, kept giving, eventually, I'd be seen. Not just noticed when they needed something. Seen. But I wasn't a son. I was a safety net. A backup plan. The plan B they kept in their back pocket until it was too late to pretend otherwise. When I finally walked away, I didn't do it to hurt them. I did it because I had nothing left to give. Not just money, me. My time, my energy, my care. And when they came crawling back, not with apologies, but with expectations, that's when I knew. It was never love. It was usefulness. And once I wasn't useful, I became disposable. But here's what I've learned: walking away doesn't make you cold. Setting boundaries doesn't make you selfish. It makes you free. I didn't lose my family. They lost the version of me that tolerated being invisible. And I'll never go back. Lena was never the villain in the beginning. Just the favorite. But the thing about never being told no is, you start to believe you're owed everything. She failed upward. Every mistake was forgiven. Every crash cushioned. Every mess cleaned up. She didn't grow, she coasted. The problem wasn't that she asked for help. It was that she expected it. Demanded it. Smirked while doing it. And when someone finally drew a line, she didn't reflect. She lashed out. Called it cruelty. Laughed it off until the consequences came knocking. And even then, she never apologized. Because when you've spent your whole life being rescued, you don't recognize the moment when no one's coming anymore. My mother was always gentle. Always soft-spoken. The kind of woman who never raised her voice, but knew exactly how to make you feel guilty for disappointing her. She didn't yell. She didn't threaten. She just sighed. She said things like, "You know your sister struggles," or "Can't you just help this once," or "You're her brother." That means something. She wrapped manipulation in love, and it took me most of my adult life to see the difference. The part that hurts the most? She never stood up for me. Not once. Not when I was overlooked. Not when Lena burned me. Not even when I quietly crumbled from the weight of being everything to everyone. She didn't hate me. She just loved Lena more. And that was enough. My father wasn't cruel. Just distant. Controlled. A man of few words, most of them blunt. To him, fairness was practical, not emotional. Lena needs it more was reason enough. You're fine meant stop complaining. He believed struggle builds character, but only for me. He saw my success as proof I didn't need support. And saw Lena's failures as proof that she deserved it. He respected achievement, but not mine. Because it came without his help. And when I finally stood my ground, he didn't hear the pain. He only heard defiance. Pride disguised as principle. He didn't hug me when I left. Didn't call to explain. Didn't try to understand. Because in his world, love was conditional, and I had broken the terms. The new apartment wasn't big. It didn't have a fancy view or high-end finishes. But it was mine. No one else had a key. No one else had a claim. I kept the space simple, light walls, dark wood floors, a couch that was finally comfortable, and a tiny balcony where I drank my coffee in the mornings and listened to the city exhale around me. I changed my number the same day I moved in. No warning. No forwarding contact. It was like stepping through a door and locking it behind me. The first few nights were strange. Too quiet, maybe. I'd catch myself listening for footsteps, doors slamming, someone asking what's for dinner. But there was only me. And for once, that was enough. Solo dinners became peaceful rituals. No more cooking for others and being ignored. Just me, music playing low, the scent of roasted garlic and butter filling the room like home finally should. I didn't just cut them off. I cut off the part of me that thought their love was worth earning. And what came after wasn't loneliness. It was peace. You don't realize how heavy something was until you set it down. For years, I carried guilt I never earned. Responsibility no one else would shoulder. I twisted myself to fit into the mold they needed, provider, fixer, ATM with a heartbeat. And for what? A place at the table that came with conditions. A family built on obligation, not connection. Walking away didn't happen all at once. It was slow. Uncomfortable. It chipped at me in small moments, until I finally snapped the thread that tied me to people who would let me drown just to keep themselves dry. There's grief in that, sure. But also relief. Freedom doesn't always feel like a firework. Sometimes, it's just the quiet click of a door you don't reopen. I still think about them from time to time. Not with rage. Not even with sadness. Just distance. And in that distance, I found something better than approval. I found myself. If you're still here, listening to this, thank you. I didn't share this to be praised. I didn't do it for revenge. I told it because someone out there needs to hear it. You don't have to stay loyal to people who only love the version of you that serves them. You're allowed to say no. You're allowed to put yourself first. And you're allowed to walk away, even if it means walking alone for a while. Because sometimes the loneliest path leads you straight to peace. If your family gave everything to someone else, and then came back with empty hands and guilt when it all fell apart, would you open the door again? Would you let them in, tell yourself that they're still family, and go back to carrying the weight that broke you? Or would you finally say, that's enough? Would you walk away, not out of spite, but to protect your sanity, your peace, and the part of you they never truly cared to understand? Because that's what I had to do. And it changed everything. So now I'm asking you. What would you have done in my place? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'll be reading every single one. Here's the thing most people don't want to admit. Love doesn't mean submission. It doesn't mean staying silent. It doesn't mean tolerating disrespect with a smile just because it comes from your parents or your sister. And loyalty? It's not some chain they can use to drag you back every time they mess up. Loyalty without respect is just servitude. What I've learned is this. Family isn't who shares your blood. It's who sees your worth when you have nothing to offer. It's who listens. Who lifts you up. It's the people who don't just take, but give back. Sometimes, that's a friend. Sometimes, it's a stranger. And sometimes, it's just you. I know this story might sound cold to some people. Harsh. Maybe even heartless. But what I did to survive. To rebuild. To stop being the backup plan in someone else's life, and start being the main character in my own. So if you're holding on to people who only show up when they need you, let go. Walk away. Heal. Start over. Even if it hurts. Even if it's hard. Because the love you're begging for, you already deserve it. From yourself, first. And peace is priceless.